The billionaire lost his memory in an accident, and the only person who could help him was the woman he once rejected. "Natalie, I told you, I'm not interested." The words fell like hammer blows in the lofty, glass-walled corridor of the Sterling Corporation's headquarters. High above the busy Manhattan streets, the building's executive floor was usually hushed, but the tension crackling in the air between two people was impossible to ignore. Natalie Parker gripped the portfolio in her hands, knuckles white. She wore a simple navy blue blouse and a knee-length skirt, professional yet modest. Her dark curls were pulled into a low bun. She blinked back tears, trying to maintain composure as she stared at the man before her. "Ryan," she began, voice trembling, "I'm not asking for the world. I'm only asking for the opportunity to present my design pitch to you. It could transform Sterling Interiors, boost profits and your reputation." Ryan Sterling, CEO of the Sterling Corporation and heir to a sprawling real estate and luxury design empire, raised one imperious eyebrows. Tall, with meticulously styled dark hair and a tailored suit, he exuded the effortless confidence of someone born into power. He crossed his arms over his chest, turning slightly away from her, revealing Manhattan's skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Your pitch is too ambitious." And frankly, he paused, eyes flicking over her outfit. "I need an established partner for our new design venture, not an unproven freelancer." Natalie felt her heart sink. She had spent weeks perfecting the design concept, hoping to leverage her creative flair into a full-time contract with Sterling Interiors. Her proposals for sustainable, futuristic showrooms were bold, yes, but she believed passionately in them. She had pinned her hopes on this final meeting. "I've already sunk my personal savings into developing these prototypes," Natalie said, voice low. "I was counting on Sterling Interiors' partnership." A flicker of discomfort flashed across Ryan's face, quickly replaced by a dismissive shrug. "That's not my problem," he said coldly. "This is business, Natalie. We need proven track records, solid marketing ties." She saw the finality in his gaze. Her eyes stung. "Why ask me here if you'd already made up your mind?" He hesitated, glancing at the glass door behind her, perhaps worried the staff might overhear. "Because I respect your hustle, and the designs looked interesting at first glance. But after a closer review, it's clear you're just not on the level Sterling Interiors requires." Those words lanced through her. "Not on your level." The remark stung like a personal insult, but it was hardly surprising. Ryan Sterling was known for his cutthroat approach to business. He expected perfection, dismissing those who didn't meet his lofty standards. Nonetheless, Natalie mustered the last shred of her dignity. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll take my work elsewhere." Ryan nodded, turning away. "That's best." She told herself she'd never again ask Ryan Sterling for help, or for anything at all. 3 days later, the city was battered by a violent thunderstorm. Rain sluiced down skyscraper windows, and howling winds rattled street signs. Natalie had spent most of that day sending out desperate proposals to other investors, praying someone might see the value in her designs. That evening, she hunched over her small desk in her cramped Brooklyn studio, poring over spreadsheets. A single flickering lamp cast elongated shadows on the walls. When her phone rang, she nearly jumped. The caller ID read, "Private number." Hoping it might be a potential investor, she answered. "Hello?" A pause, then a woman's uneasy voice. "Is this M's Natalie Parker?" "Yes, it is." "My name is Eliza Benton, Mr. Sterling's executive assistant." Natalie's stomach clenched at the mention of Ryan Sterling. "Hi," she said hesitantly. I don't know how to say this, but Mr. Sterling's been in an accident. A severe car crash. He's stabilized at Mercy General Hospital, but..." Eliza's voice faltered, and Natalie found herself rising from her seat as if drawn by an invisible force. "Is he?" she began, a swirl of shock and concern warring within her. "He's alive," Eliza said quickly, "but the doctors say he has partial amnesia. His memory of the last few years is spotty. He's asked for you." Natalie blinked, confusion and disbelief colliding. "Asked for me?" she echoed. "That's impossible. Ryan and I, well, we're not exactly friends. In fact, he just turned down my work." Eliza's tone grew more urgent. "The doctors say that in certain amnesiac states, a patient can fixate on specific names or events from their partial recollections. He keeps mentioning your name, over and over, along with bits and pieces about interior designs. Miss Parker, we've tried coaxing him, but he's agitated. It might help if you came in." Natalie's grip tightened on her phone. She could still feel the sting of Ryan's recent dismissal. Yet the faint quaver in Eliza's voice told her how serious this was. "All right," Natalie whispered, surprising even herself. "I'll be there soon." She hung up, heart pounding. Despite everything, her bruised pride, the anger at his rejection, she couldn't ignore a voice calling out for help. Something in the pit of her stomach told her she had to go. Rain pounded on the streets as she hurried to hail a cab. The city lights blurred through the downpour, adding to her sense of disorientation. She had never imagined the arrogant billionaire could be so vulnerable, or that she might be the one person he needed. Natalie arrived at Mercy General Hospital drenched from the rain. The fluorescent lights in the lobby cast a harsh glow, and the antiseptic smell prickled her nose. Her heart hammered with each step, uncertain what awaited her. When she reached the 8th floor, Eliza Benton was there, a slender woman in a neat pantsuit. Deep shadows etched under Eliza's eyes, and lines of worry marred her otherwise composed face. "Ms. Parker," she said in hushed urgency, "thank you for coming. Ryan's in that room." She pointed down the corridor. "He's awake, but disoriented. The doctors suspect traumatic brain injury with retrograde amnesia. He recalls fragments from years ago, but he's fuzzy on recent events." Natalie swallowed, nodding. "Any specific instructions?" Eliza's eyes flicked to the closed door. "Just be patient with him. We're hoping seeing you might unlock certain memories, or at least calm him down." Taking a deep breath, Natalie approached the door and gently pushed it open. The private hospital room was quiet, white curtains drawn across a window, monitors beeping softly. Ryan lay on the bed, bandaged around his head, one arm in a sling. When he turned his face toward her, confusion clouded his gray-blue eyes. She froze in the doorway, her heart twisting at the sight. Gone was the haughty arrogance. He looked lost. "Ryan?" she said quietly. His eyes flicked over her, as though searching for a thread of recognition. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, in a raspy voice, "Natalie." She inched closer to the bed, uncertain if she should stand or sit. He studied her face, struggling to recall. "They said you might come," he murmured, brow furrowing. How do we know each other again?" Her breath caught. We met through your company. You, considered my interior design proposals." Ryan's expression flickered with frustration. "I see bits and pieces in my head, but it's hazy. I remember your name, your face. Something about showrooms." She found herself pulling a chair closer to the bed, ignoring the swirl of emotions. "You used to run the show at Sterling Corporation." "Well, you still do, theoretically. You're a big shot." "And I guess I was just a designer who tried to pitch you an idea." His lips curved in a faint, wry smile. "If you came all this way, you must be more than just a designer." A pang of memory, his harsh words, his dismissal, stabbed at her chest. But she remained composed. "I'm here because your assistant asked me to come. They said you'd been mentioning me." He leaned back against the pillows, eyes drifting to the overhead fluorescent light, then returning to her. "I remember liking your designs. Or at least, that's what my mind conjures." The statement startled her. "You turned me down, actually," she said gently. "You said I wasn't on your level." A flicker of regret crossed his face. "I said that?" She nodded, heart hammering. She hadn't expected to confront the moment of rejection so soon, especially while he lay there injured. Ryan swallowed. "I don't remember. That's not how I feel now." He exhaled, wincing as though the motion pained him. "I don't know how I feel. My thoughts are so tangled. Whenever I try to recall something recent, it's like chasing smoke. But I see your face. It's clear. Like a lifeline, you know?" Natalie's lips parted, surprised at his candid vulnerability. She wrestled with a surge of compassion. This was the same man who had once brushed her aside, now gazing at her like she was the only familiar anchor in a terrifying ocean of uncertainty. "Ryan," she said gently, "maybe I can help. We can go through your memories. You might remember things bit by bit." A wave of relief seemed to wash over him. "I'd like that." Over the next few days, Natalie found herself at the hospital more than she ever would have expected. Ryan's condition stabilized physically, but his memory remained inconsistent. Sometimes, a stray comment would trigger a flash of recollection, and he'd eagerly latch onto the memory, only to lose it again moments later. She told him basic details about his life, the high-end property developments, the recent expansions of Sterling Interiors, the staff who managed daily operations. He listened intently, often grilling her for more. "Why do I feel like I was so ruthless?" he asked her once, a week into his recovery. "Were people afraid of me?" Natalie bit her lip. She recalled the intimidation she'd felt in his presence, but she was careful not to wound him. You had high standards. People respected you. Maybe they feared disappointing you, I guess. A flicker of sorrow crossed his face. That's not how I want to be remembered. At times she caught glimpses of the old Ryan, like when a nurse accidentally spilled a drink on his bedsheet, and his frustration flared, but instead of snapping, he reined it in quickly, as if the outburst itself confused him. Natalie did her best to remain objective. She'd initially agreed to help because the doctors insisted she might be a key to unlocking his memory. But the more time she spent with him, the more she saw a side of Ryan Sterling that contradicted her prior assumptions. He was kinder, humbler, even insecure about his lost identity. Despite her efforts to keep it professional, an emotional current pulled them closer. Late one night, as she sat at his bedside, reading from his old project notes, he rested his hand on hers, a silent gesture of gratitude. Her heart fluttered traitorously. She knew she had to guard herself, but it was hard to remain indifferent to this new, vulnerable Ryan. One evening, as she gathered her belongings to leave, he reached out, voice low. "Natalie, stay a bit longer. I hate feeling alone in this blank space. And you," he faltered, eyes searching hers. "I feel safe with you." Warmth rushed through her chest, mingled with caution. She nodded, sinking back into the chair. "All right, just for a little while." Their conversation drifted to inconsequential topics, favorite foods, childhood vacations, anything that might jog his memory. He teased out details from her life, too, in that earnest tone of someone trying to connect. When she finally left, hours later, she stared at the city lights from the hospital parking lot, heart in turmoil. She owed him empathy. He was lost. But she also remembered his cold dismissal, the sting of being deemed not on his level. Was she making a mistake by letting her emotions get tangled with his precarious amnesia? The question lingered, unanswered. After nearly 3 weeks in the hospital, Ryan was discharged with medical approval for partial outpatient therapy. His doctors recommended minimal stress, but the Sterling Corporation demanded his attention, especially after rumors circulated about his condition. Half a dozen board members insisted on a meeting to assess whether Ryan was fit to continue leading. Natalie accompanied him to the boardroom at his request, though she felt out of place among the impeccably dressed executives. As they entered the sleek, glass-paneled room high above Manhattan, a hush fell. The board members, some older men, some polished women in power suits, regarded Ryan with uneasy curiosity. They greeted him politely, though one or two wore expressions that bordered on vulture-like, as if preparing to pounce on a weakened leader. "Ryan, welcome back," said Harrison Blackwood, an austere figure who served as the CFO. "We're glad you're recovered enough to attend. We do have concerns about your memory." Ryan sat at the head of the table, Natalie at his side. He seemed determined to project authority, but the bandages around his healing injuries were a stark reminder of his vulnerability. "My memory's improving daily," he said with forced confidence. "I'm prepared to resume full responsibilities soon." A woman with cropped silver hair, Aurora James, leaned forward. "And who is this young lady?" she asked, gesturing to Natalie. "This is Natalie Parker," Ryan explained. "She's been assisting me with my recollection." Some board members exchanged uncertain glances. Harrison cleared his throat. "Ryan, we're concerned about the status of the new interior design project. You'd allocated funds for expansions and a high-profile showroom launch. But you haven't attended a single planning meeting in weeks." Ryan glanced at Natalie, then back at the board. "I'm aware. Let's proceed with the expansions as planned. Ms. Parker can provide input on design direction." A ripple of surprise moved around the table. "Miss Parker?" Aurora echoed. "But we have established designers on retainer. Where does she fit?" Ryan's jaw tensed. "I value her perspective. She has advanced ideas that might modernize our brand." Natalie felt heat creep up her neck. She was a mere freelancer, not an established name. She recognized the board's skepticism. When a tall, stern-faced man in the corner, a key investor, spoke up, his tone was loaded with doubt. "Forgive me, but Ms. Parker is an unknown quantity. Ryan, are you sure your condition isn't clouding your judgment?" A hush spread. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "I'm quite sure. Miss Parker is an asset." He didn't raise his voice, but his resolve was palpable. Natalie's heart pounded. She realized how big a risk he was taking, staking part of the future of Sterling Interiors on her. Weeks ago, he'd dismissed her entirely. Now, with partial amnesia, he was championing her designs. "I'd like Miss Parker to present her concepts," Ryan added, ignoring the board's uncertain murmurs. "She'll have a chance to prove her worth, as she already has to me." A pin-drop silence followed. Harrison Blackwood exchanged a glance with Aurora, then gave a tight nod. "Very well. We'll schedule a formal presentation next week. But Ryan, understand we're all looking out for the company's best interests. If you show any signs of incapacity, the board will have to reassess your role." Ryan's gaze flicked with unspoken fury. He stood, ignoring the twinge of pain in his side. "Noted," he said tersely. Natalie gathered her notes and followed him out, heart hammering. As they strode to the elevator, she could feel his frustration pulsing. Inside the elevator, he let out a ragged breath. "They don't trust me. They think I've lost my edge." She hesitated, placing a gentle hand on his uninjured arm. "Give them a reason to trust you again. Let them see you still have the same mind, maybe even a better perspective now." He looked down at her hand, then back at her face. "Thank you, Natalie, for standing by me." The sincerity in his gaze made her pulse flutter. Despite everything, she found herself wanting to protect him. A few days later, Natalie painstakingly prepared the design she had once pitched to Ryan. This time, she integrated some modifications he suggested from his scattered recollections. He claimed to recall bits of modern minimalism, brand synergy, something about bringing the future into the present. Their synergy blossomed. They worked late nights at his penthouse apartment, which boasted sweeping city views and a living room large enough to sprawl out all her sketches. Sometimes, after hours of discussion, they'd pause to share coffee or takeout, exchanging personal stories. It felt surreal, like two old friends forging a deeper bond. But the illusions of peace shattered one evening when the elevator to Ryan's penthouse opened, revealing a sharply dressed woman with fiery red hair. She stormed inside, ignoring Natalie's presence at first, her emerald eyes locked on Ryan. "Ryan," she snapped. "You've been ignoring my calls for weeks." Ryan blinked in confusion. I don't know who you are." The woman froze, shock registering. "It's me, Olivia Graves. We've been seeing each other for months." Natalie's chest tightened. This must be the well-connected socialite rumored to be Ryan's on-again, off-again girlfriend. She'd read about Olivia in a gossip magazine once, perched on Ryan's arm at a charity gala. "You had an accident," Natalie interjected gently, stepping forward. "He has partial amnesia." Olivia's gaze flicked over to her, surprise mingling with hostility. "Amnesia? That's ridiculous. So you're playing nursemaid now?" Ryan frowned, clearly uncomfortable. "Ms. Graves, I'm sorry. I truly don't recall you." Olivia's lips thinned. "We had a complicated relationship, but you never forgot me before." She pointed a manicured finger at Natalie. "Has she put you up to this? You can't just waltz in and steal my place." Natalie swallowed a retort. She hadn't even known about Olivia until this moment. Ryan held up a hand. "Stop. Natalie's not doing anything nefarious. She's helping me regain my memory." Olivia let out a humorless laugh. "Helping you, is she? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're throwing me away for some random woman." Hurt flared in Natalie's chest at the insinuation, but she kept her expression neutral. Ryan shook his head slowly, eyes troubled. "I'm sorry, but if we had something, I just can't remember." Olivia's face contorted with anger. She marched up to him, voice low and biting. "You always have to be in control, don't you?" "Fine. If you really can't remember me, don't expect me to wait around. But let me warn you, people are talking. The board. Investors. They question your capabilities. And I had your back until now." She spun on her heel, glared at Natalie, then stormed out, leaving tense silence in her wake. Ryan exhaled, rubbing his temples. "What was she to me?" he asked quietly, looking at Natalie with haunted eyes. Natalie felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm not sure. A friend, maybe more. But if you can't remember, maybe it wasn't meant to be." He nodded absently, then gazed at the city lights beyond the window. "I used to know everything, who I was with, how to run my empire. Now it's like I'm drifting." Natalie stepped beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We'll face it together." His eyes flicked to her hand, then to her face. For a moment, an unspoken current of emotion pulsed between them. "Thank you," he murmured. "I don't know what I'd do without you right now." Her heart clenched. She wondered if the man he had been before, the one who'd treated her so dismissively, would ever have uttered such words. If his memory returned fully, Would that old version of Ryan resurface and push her away again? The day of the design presentation dawned bright and clear. Natalie dressed in her best blazer, nerves chewing at her. The board meeting, set in Sterling Corporation's main conference hall, would be her chance to prove both Ryan's judgment and her own abilities. Ryan arrived with her, looking pale but determined. He refused to bring a cane or any sign of weakness, though he was still healing physically. The board members filed in, curiosity and skepticism etched into their faces. Natalie began her pitch. She showcased 3D renderings of avant-garde showrooms, eco-friendly materials, interactive displays for prospective buyers, an immersive experience that could set Sterling Interiors apart. She spoke of weaving Ryan's brand legacy into a forward-thinking approach. At first, the board's expressions were unreadable. Then, as she delved deeper, explaining how these designs could translate into real revenue, she caught glimpses of genuine interest. Harrison Blackwood, previously so stern, leaned forward. Aurora James tapped a pen against her notebook in excitement. Finally, after nearly an hour, she wrapped up. The room fell silent. "Impressive," Harrison said, clearing his throat. "This is a bold direction. And Ms. Parker, you've clearly put a great deal of thought into it." Ryan, who had allowed Natalie to lead the show, now spoke. "Sterling Interiors needs innovation," he said quietly. "This is the next step." One of the older investors frowned. "But can we trust your leadership, Ryan? Your accident? Your memory issues? Are you sure you can handle the challenges?" Ryan's jaw tensed. "My memory might be incomplete, but my vision for the company is stronger than ever. Ms. Parker's proposal is proof. We combine her expertise with my resources. That's how we move forward." A flurry of side conversations erupted. Natalie's stomach knotted, waiting for the verdict. Finally, Aurora James rose. "As the head of design synergy at Sterling, I support adopting Ms. Parker's concept. It's fresh, and it aligns with modern consumer expectations." Others murmured agreement. Harrison raised a hand. "We'll schedule a final vote next week." But it seems the board is inclined to support this direction. Relief washed over Natalie. She glanced at Ryan, who nodded, relief mingled with determination in his eyes. It wasn't a full confirmation, but it was a pivotal step forward. That evening, Natalie accompanied Ryan back to his penthouse. They shared cautious optimism. He was closer to retaining his position, and she was on the verge of her biggest professional breakthrough. As they stepped out of the elevator, Ryan swayed, pressing a hand to his temple. "Ryan?" she asked, alarmed, steadying him. He inhaled sharply. "I'm fine, just a headache." But as they moved into the living room, he sank onto the sofa, wincing. A sudden flash of recollection ignited in his eyes. "I remember the day I said those things to you. The pitch you gave me. He clutched his forehead, voice taut with regret. "I was in a rush for another meeting. I skimmed your designs, and, oh God, I said you weren't good enough." Tears pricked Natalie's eyes at the memory. "Yes," she said softly, sitting beside him. "You told me you wanted a proven partner. I left your office devastated." He let out a choked sound. "I'm so sorry, Natalie. I must have sounded like a heartless jerk." His eyes glistened with remorse. Without hesitation, she placed a hand on his. "Maybe you were that day," she admitted, "but the man I've come to know these past weeks is different." He turned his hand over, fingers lacing with hers. "What if I revert? What if my memory fully returns and I become that cold, ruthless person again?" She shook her head, tears threatening to fall. "You have the power to choose. The accident changed you, yes, but maybe it revealed what you can be without all that pressure and pride." He gazed at her, 1,000 emotions swirling in his eyes. "I care about you, Natalie. Even if I can't recall everything, I know that's real. And I want to be better, someone worthy of your trust." A wave of warmth and vulnerability swept over her. She realized she cared for him too, this new version who was genuine and self-aware. But fear lingered. "I'm scared, Ryan," she whispered, "that once you fully recover, you'll push me away again." He cupped her cheek, drawing her close. "I won't." Before she could respond, his lips brushed hers, tentative at first, then deeper, a mixture of longing, apology, and an unspoken promise of a second chance. She melted into the moment, tears slipping down her cheeks, heart pounding in her ears. When they pulled apart, they held each other's gaze in the soft glow of the city lights. "I won't let you go," he murmured, "no matter what." In the following days, the swirl of events gained momentum. The board officially approved Natalie's designs, securing the future of the Sterling Interiors expansion. Ryan, despite lingering memory gaps, displayed enough competence and leadership to quell the board's doubts. He initiated a formal contract for Natalie, making her head of the new design initiative, an unprecedented leap in her career. She accepted with tears of joy in her eyes, unable to believe how much had changed since that fateful day in his office. They navigated the complexities of their new relationship carefully. Rumors flitted through social circles, whispers of the billionaire's amnesia, of the newly minted design head who seemed closer to him than mere colleagues. Olivia Graves made a few pointed remarks in the press, but her criticisms fizzled when Ryan publicly praised Natalie's talent. And through it all, Ryan continued his therapy, determined to piece together the rest of his life story. Some memories returned in vivid detail, others remained elusive. But one fact shone clear: he no longer wanted to be the distant, feared CEO. He saw the value in empathy, in partnership, and in second chances. On a cool spring morning a few months later, Sterling Interiors unveiled its flagship showroom in a highly publicized event. Natalie's innovative designs dazzled the press, combining digital interactivity with eco-conscious materials. Ryan, standing at her side during the ribbon-cutting ceremony, wore an expression of quiet pride. Flashes of cameras captured the moment as they stood together, fielding questions from reporters. One journalist asked Natalie, "How did you land such a prestigious project as a relatively new designer?" She smiled, glancing at Ryan. "Sometimes it takes an extraordinary circumstance to reveal hidden potential," she answered. "And it helps when someone is willing to take a chance on you, no matter the obstacles." Ryan squeezed her hand, his eyes reflecting gratitude and something far deeper. After the event, as the crowd dispersed, Ryan and Natalie found themselves alone in the gleaming new showroom. Rays of afternoon sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, illuminating the vibrant displays. He turned to her, memory mostly intact now, and traced a gentle thumb across her cheek. "Thank you for saving me. Not just from my amnesia, but from the man I used to be." She pressed her hand over his. "You saved me too. You gave me a chance when no one else would. This entire journey, it's changed us both." He leaned in, and they shared a tender kiss, the echoes of the past overshadowed by the promise of a shared future. In that moment, they were no longer just the billionaire who had lost his memory, and the woman he once rejected. They were two souls, forging a path together, united by empathy, resilience, and love. Thank you for reading The Billionaire Lost His Memory in an Accident, and the only person who could help him was the woman he once rejected. We hope this story offered you a heartfelt journey about second chances, transformation, and the power of empathy. Us. If you enjoyed this tale, we invite you to subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with more captivating narratives filled with drama, hope, and unforgettable twists. Join Soul Stirring Stories today and never miss another moving adventure.